Hey there. So I'm going to try something different today. I'm going to do some reactions. So watch with me. And the truth is, I'm house sitting in a real awesome house, and it's hard to get any work done. So let's watch these together and see what happens. So I actually wanted to watch this episode of The Officer Tatum with you because just yesterday I posted about the information gap, about how one set of Americans are getting information that's manipulated and skewed and completely biased from mainstream media. And the other part of the United States are using independent journalists and watching different sources. So there's a gap, an information gap that's actually vital because the people on one side who are listening to the lamestream absolutely believe a lot of the things that they're being fed, that they're being told. And it's causing a lot of trouble in the United States. And I get it. I actually have compassion because they're passionate about it because they fiercely believe these things to be true. So I think that very often compassion is the correct response. In any case, here is Scott Jennings completely echoing what I was saying yesterday. And it just so happened that this episode came out yesterday as well. If you don't follow the Officer Tatum, I recommend that you do. He's really good. All right, let's watch.
I debate people sometimes, and it becomes clear in the middle of the debate, there's a whole set of information they are not aware of.
But what is it like being you, having to listen to that every day, and the guests that come on and they say nonsensical stuff? Like, what is it like being Scott Jennings on the CNN?
Hey, there's no censorship.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a teleprompter and they say, you must read this. What you're hearing are my authentic thoughts and views. That's what everybody should know, number one.
I'm just going to pause it right there because authenticity really is where it's at. And on the theme of connection, authenticity is being in alignment with your truest, most natural self. And it's so important to be authentic. If you're going to make connections with other people, you first need to be in alignment and in connection with your authentic self and not making apologies, just recognizing who you are and leaning into your strengths and recognizing the challenges that you've been given that you personally are overcoming. Life's pretty cool. And I needed to say that being authentic is powerful. And so yay, Scott Jennings, for being authentic. Okay.
Yeah, I do run into people who frankly say things that I just vehemently disagree with. I think they're misguided. And oftentimes, I think the best role that I can play is just to ask very simple questions that get to the real heart of the matter and are expositive of what the liberal mindset is. And some people handle that better than others.
Yeah.
Somebody was pushing the lobster and steak hoax, the Pete Hegseth lobster hoax of 2026. And I had to deal with that by asking a very simple question. And I think, look, if you're going to bring stuff to the air, you need to be prepared to be questioned. And it may look confrontational on the air, but I think that's valuable for the audience. There are a few people that I work with that I really like and admire. I'll tell you too, honestly, David Axelrod and Van Jones. Now, people may say, how could you possibly have anything in common with them? But I'll tell you one thing about those guys that's true. They open their hearts and their ears before they open their mouths. That is a good rule for life. Now, we don't often find common ground on things, although I have to say, Van and I frequently, find ourselves, particularly on some issues dealing with like Israel and anti-Semitism and stuff. He's been a rock on that. And on political strategy, Axe and I often find ourselves coming to the same viewpoint when it comes to just strategic, like why would a politician do this or that? Are we going to agree on everything? No, they don't like Donald Trump, of course. But I find them to be good faith arguers.
I really think that that's an important comment. I think it's important to understand that I think there are a lot of things that we want the same thing of. Like we can agree on certain baseline things. Like we don't want children to be harmed. We want people to have individual liberty and freedoms. And, at a very base level, we have some agreements, even if the approach is different. So it's important to actually talk about things and not make assumptions straight away. All right, let's keep going.
You got two people that really showed up, and it's not just their reading, they're thinking.
Yeah.
And what kind of commentator would you rather watch? A thinking, debating commentator or somebody who's just reading whatever somebody handed them.
Right. I like the one like you and others that do come on and have a compelling conversation. Is somebody who they actually take this seriously.
Yes.
Which means they are thoughtful. They watch television. They do these research. They look up stuff. They want to make sure that their arguments are polished and also informative and factual. And then they're studied enough that when you go off the cuff to say something, they've already thought of these things because this is their job. This is what they do for a living.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just wanted to insert that debate is like a love language. Honestly, if you can be patient and in a place where you're exchanging ideas and listening and remain friends on the other side, and again, just have understanding of where that other person is coming from. Truly, we are multifaceted and life is multifaceted. I grew up in a very serious political household where dinner was easily at least 1 to 2 hours every single night. And we debated issues. My dad went around the table and checked in with each of us. My dad was a senior partner of a major LA law firm, and all my uncles were these politicians. So I grew up with news on all the time, a lot of political discourse. I was in mock legislatures and courts and youth and government. I was actually a federal youth ambassador to communist Eastern Europe. That was the summer right before the Berlin Wall came down. So you're welcome. So for me, because I grew up in this environment of debate and politics, I was always very, very serious because I had to do all those things these guys were talking about all the time. Everything I say, I've checked out. I do not put things forward unless I've studied it or am coming from a place of knowledge where I can back it up. And that's because I was raised with great parents who taught us this. And it was pretty special, honestly. But there's so much to be said for the dinner table, isn't there? And families. And I can hear my mom say, oh, lighten up, Annie. Learn to laugh, Annie. Have a little fun, Annie. Taking everything so seriously, Annie. And I finally learned. Okay, let's keep going.
You said it. Do you take this seriously or not? I take it very seriously. Every day I wake up and I can't believe, that some, redneck from Dawson Springs, Kentucky, they're letting talk on CNN about things going on in the world. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. And I take this job very seriously. And that means I prepare. That means I study. It means, oftentimes it means I ingest and analyze a lot of information that I never even use, but I'm prepared to.
But then also, I want to say it's kind of like a curse because they get challenged every single day. And it's apparent that, in my opinion, that most of them are unprepared or they don't have a well thought out message and they have an agenda that's very clear. They put the agenda out there. And if you weren't there, it'll just be a bunch of talking points and people just objecting to everything Trump is doing with no thought process.
The military, I gave him an out.
Yes.
And he said, oh, you think that? He mocked me for it. And then, of course, within 45 minutes, the internet is like producing videos of soldiers eating the steak and the lobster. Of course, if you would look, that's a good example, though, of a story that started in like Democratic, fringe internet circles. But you can see how quickly it bubbled up to a mainstream guy like Paul Begala. And he just kind of bought it without stopping to think, maybe I should like Google this before I get into it. And if you'd Googled it, you'd see pictures of the Obamas serving steak and lobster to the troops. You'd see a press release about Secretary Austin from the Biden years buying nice food for the troops. This is a decades-long military tradition. Right. And by the way, every American I know says, we ought to feed these men and women anything they want because they're protecting us.
They deserve it. Yeah, they deserve it. Come on, for our veterans and our active duty soldiers.
So even if it's true, we do spend money on this, it's a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing. And so the idea that you would come to the air and like with a straight face say, Pete Hegseth ate $7 million worth of lobster and not expect someone like me, to shift into beast mode. Like, come on, man. Like, honestly, you probably see some of this stuff. I see stuff like that in the fringe Democratic, like social media on X and everything. Man, they'll believe anything. They'll believe anything.
Some people are good people. They have good intentions. They just, they've never talked to a conservative before.
Yes.
But the actual young people who are really coming and they want to ask me a question, and they've never heard anybody say any of the things. They've never heard any of these factual realities when it comes to Trump and things that he's done or what Iran has done and why we're going to war, anything in Gaza, in Venezuela,
Yeah.
with taxes, tariffs, housing, Mamdani, and the ridiculous things that he actually say that gets called out. They've never heard that.
No. What you're talking about, and I run into this on CNN a lot. I debate people sometimes, and it becomes clear in the middle of the debate, there's a whole set of information they are not aware of.
Exactly it. That's exactly it. Two things. That gap that I was talking about yesterday. One group of people are being given this information and they're actually really, really believing it passionately. And then this other group has different information. You know, I feel like the people who watch mainstream media are here looking at a screen, and we are out here all watching them watch this screen and believing everything that's on the screen when there's this whole other sphere of reality that it's like we can see them believing this sphere. It's really, really interesting.
And honestly, I think as a culture and as a society, it's something we got to wrestle with. It is hard to have a shared national purpose when we do not have a shared reality.
I made this TikTok like a week ago about how we are like individual pieces of a stained glass masterpiece. We're all different shapes and sizes. Some of us are thicker, some of us are thinner, some have air bubbles, others have waves rolling through them. But each of us is glorious. Each of us is unique and individual and beautiful. But well, the metaphor actually continues with allowing the light to shine through us, not allowing guck and grime to build up on us, which I liken to inflammation. But in this case, I want to talk about the solder that holds us together. There's no masterpiece if we're just pieces of glass sitting on the floor with no sunlight shining through. We need a force that holds us together, the solder that puts us together in this shape that allows the sun to shine through. And then we're like this glorious, beautiful, incredible masterpiece. I've learned, though, that not all pieces of glass are created equal. When you are a product of incest and incest and incest, right? Then maybe you're not as sturdy of a piece of glass. So not all cultures, I think, actually are equal. And that can be a different topic, but I think the potential is there for everybody. And I think that the individual pieces I think that being these individual pieces that are unique and beautiful is completely holds true for everybody. We're incredible. Just the fact that we're here is incredible. Okay, I'm going to stop now and let's listen to Scott.
And for a lot of these liberals and people on the left, they're only interacting with themselves and they're only interacting with information that confirms their priors. And some of that information is bogus.
Mm.
So when that comes in contact with a conservative or just anyone else who has access to other facts, other information, you can see it melts like a paper straw, you know, and they don't emotionally often know how to deal with that, because I think this is another problem with people on the left is, you know, their debates tend to be ruled by emotion.
Mm.
Ours tend to be ruled by facts, logic, rational decision making, you know, real arguments. They're very emotional, particularly when it comes to Trump stuff.
Okay, so that was Scott Jennings on the Officer Tatum. Officer Brandon Tatum is really worth checking out. Go to the Officer Tatum and give him a follow. As always, it's in connection that we thrive. Connection within our one cell thick gut lining, connection to the earth, connection to each other, and connection to faith. That is how we heal and thrive. Unfortunately, we live in a very divided time, and we must also look at the gaps that create this division and the stressors in our country and in the world. Okay, you're miraculous. Make it a great day, you guys.